John Wayne Western Series, Part 1, The Cowboy Rises. Before John Wayne became the face of the American West, before the swagger and the drawl were instantly recognizable around the world,
she overheard enough to know that they've got something planned.
he was just another young actor struggling to find his place in Hollywood. Nobody in 1930 could have predicted that this tall, awkward kid from Iowa would one day define the cowboy itself. But legends don't start at the top. They start in the dust, in the shadows, clawing their way into the light. And Wayne's rise from unknown bit player to silver screen gunslinger is one of the most fascinating transformations in film history. This is the story of how John Wayne became the cowboy, and it all began with a gamble so big it nearly ended his career before it even started. Wayne's first major role wasn't a small western at all. It was an epic. The Big Trail, directed by Raoul Walsh, was one of Hollywood's earliest widescreen productions, shot on a massive scale with thousands of extras, real wagons, and locations stretching across 7 states. And at the center of it was a 23-year-old John Wayne, cast as Breck Coleman, a wagon train scout leading settlers across the frontier.
I've got business that calls me back down the road Santa Fe way.
For the studio, it was a bet, a new format, a new star, and a new way of telling the story of the West. But there was a problem. Audiences in 1930 weren't ready for widescreen. Theaters couldn't afford to upgrade their equipment, and the film flopped at the box office. The ambitious production, which should have made Wayne a star overnight, instead left him in Hollywood limbo. For most actors, that would have been the end of the story. But for John Wayne, it was just the beginning. The failure of The Big Trail pushed him into the world of low-budget B-westerns, the kind of quick and cheap productions where stars are either made or forgotten. And for Wayne, these years would shape the cowboy image that audiences would eventually never let go of. After The Big Trail, Wayne vanished from the big-budget spotlight and landed in what Hollywood called Poverty Row, tiny studios churning out low-budget westerns at lightning speed. These were films made on shoestring budgets, with predictable plots, recycled sets, and heroes who always got the girl. But for Wayne, this wasn't a dead end, it was a training camp. In Riders of Destiny, Wayne played Singin' Sandy Saunders. Yes, you heard that right. A singing cowboy. Except, Wayne couldn't sing. His voice was dubbed over, and audiences found the effect more bizarre than charming.
And swung at his side.
Still, the film gave him steady work and allowed him to start shaping the rugged cowboy persona that would later define his career. Even here, in what should have been a forgettable gimmick role, Wayne showed something different, a steadiness on screen. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't theatrical. He carried himself like a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. Wayne churned out film after film, often 3 or 4 per year, working under tiny contracts that barely paid the bills. The Man from Monterey and The Telegraph Trail were forgettable by Hollywood standards, but each one gave Wayne something he badly needed: practice. Every line delivered, every fight scene staged, every dusty ride through the desert was another step toward refining his screen presence.
Dolores, you don't love this man, do you?
He wasn't yet the Duke, but you could see the early signs of his calm confidence, the stillness that made him stand out even in cheap productions. Wayne himself later admitted these early films were nothing special, but he also said he learned more on those Poverty Row sets than in any acting class. By now, Wayne had settled into a pattern. The plots were predictable. Bad guys terrorize a town. Wayne rides in. Justice is served. But what's interesting is how he slowly began experimenting with the Wayne walk, that rolling stride, like a man balancing on the deck of a ship. Audiences didn't know it yet, but this physicality would become as iconic as his voice. And though the films looked cheap, small-town audiences loved them. Wayne's face was becoming familiar. He wasn't a star yet, but he was on screens across America, week after week. These quick-fire westerns had Wayne facing off against bandits, cattle rustlers, and corrupt town bosses. They weren't classics, but they kept his name in theaters, and importantly, they were cheap to produce. meaning studios kept calling him back. By Blue Steel, you can see Wayne starting to look comfortable in the saddle, commanding more of the screen.
Sit down.
Think you're pretty slick, don't you?
No, just careful. You might have been the polka dot bandit.
In The Lucky Texan, paired with George "Gabby" Hayes, we get the kind of sidekick dynamic that would follow Wayne through much of his career. Gabby Hayes was already a character actor with a growing reputation, and pairing him with Wayne added texture to the stories. Suddenly, Wayne wasn't just the lone cowboy, he was a leader, a figure others looked up to.
Morning, stranger.
Hi, old-timer. Guess you don't remember me.
At this point, Wayne was practically a machine, knocking out films at a pace modern actors would never dream of. These weren't prestige pictures, but to small-town audiences hungry for westerns, Wayne was becoming a familiar face.
You made good time, Yak.
How long you wait?
Oh, I got here last night. What'd you find out?
The repetition worked in his favor. Each role hammered the image deeper, tall, stoic, unflinching. Even if nobody was calling him a star yet, Wayne was laying the bricks of a persona that felt larger than life. It's here that he began to perfect something subtle, the pause. Wayne learned that silence on screen could be just as powerful as dialogue, and that would become his trademark. By now, Wayne's career looked like it might stall permanently in B-movie cowboy territory. Dozens of quick westerns, none breaking through to mainstream success. But here's the twist. Those films trained audiences as much as they trained Wayne. Viewers started associating his face with the frontier. Even if the films weren't classics, Wayne was slowly becoming the cowboy next door.
Well, I was figuring on getting out tomorrow night. Thought I'd try and even up that cribbage score.
Fans in rural towns saw Wayne on screen and thought, that's us, that's our man. And that quiet connection mattered. By 1935, Wayne was the star of so many nearly identical westerns that critics joked you could splice them together and get the same story every time.
Which way did they go?
Towards Arizona.
Thanks.
But Wayne wasn't discouraged. He saw these films as stepping stones, and he was right. Because just a few years later, the right director, the right script, and the right moment in Hollywood would finally align. This film, though still a B-Western, stood out for its slightly larger scale. Wayne looked more polished, his voice carried more authority, and suddenly, you could glimpse the screen presence of a leading man. He wasn't Singin' Sandy anymore. He was John Wayne. Industry insiders started noticing him again. He wasn't ready for stardom, but the idea of Wayne as a true leading man wasn't laughable anymore. When director John Ford cast Wayne in Stagecoach, it wasn't just another Western. It was a gamble, but this time, the gamble paid off. The film was a critical and commercial hit, elevating the Western genre and cementing Wayne as its undisputed star. As the Ringo Kid, Wayne delivered the role that audiences had been waiting nearly a decade to see. He was confident, he was magnetic, and he looked like the very embodiment of the American frontier.
I gotta go to Lordsburg. Why don't you go to my ranch and wait for me?
The way Ford introduced Wayne, camera zooming in on his face as he twirls his rifle, became one of the most iconic shots in Western history. Overnight, Wayne went from B-movie cowboy to Hollywood's next big thing. John Wayne's first decade in Hollywood wasn't filled with glory. It was sweat, grind, and more forgettable westerns than most actors would survive. But each role, good, bad, or downright embarrassing, taught him how to move, how to talk, how to be the cowboy audiences would eventually worship. And by the time Stagecoach hit theaters in 1939, Wayne wasn't just another actor looking for a break. He was ready. Decades of cheap westerns had forged him into the perfect star for John Ford's vision. The young man who once played a singing cowboy had finally found his voice, and Hollywood was about to listen. But what came next would take him from B-movie gunslinger to the face of America itself. In the 1940s, John Wayne wouldn't just play cowboys. He'd become a symbol of war, patriotism, and larger-than-life masculinity. Make sure you're subscribed, because in Part 2, we'll uncover how John Wayne went from a Western workhorse to one of Hollywood's most powerful stars, and how those roles shaped the legend we still remember today.